Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. It's June 23, 2023. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Exyl. Exyl, where in the heck are you calling in from?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm currently in Michigan at Oxbow School of Art, where I'm a fellow for this summer. So I'm in the middle of the woods. The Wi-Fi is rickety. Um, there's lots of deer around.
How cool is that?
Yeah, yeah, it's fun. It's right on Lake Michigan.
Lake Michigan, that's my home state. So, and that's where we met at the Ann Arbor Film Festival. So, the first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
What is the best thing for a human being? Like, hmm, I think the best thing for a human being is the ability to change.
Oh, that is a great answer. I never get that answer, and I agree with it. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
Um, Through people. I think my favorite form of information is through talking to other people, and
Yeah,
seeing who they are and interacting with them and hearing their stories.
yeah, we call that direct experience sometimes. I agree. That's exactly why I do this sort of stuff. Why do
Yeah.
you think humans collect or gather information?
Um, Recently, I feel like a lot of people have been thinking about Ursula Le Guin's um, article, The Carrier Bag of Fiction, um, where she thinks about how the first tool was not a stick but a bag, in order to carry things back home. And I think that we gather information to bring them back home, because information, like all other objects, can be precious to us because we ascribe meaning to it.
That is amazing. Tell me once again the name. Is that a novel or a short story?
It's an article by Ursula Le Guin, and it's called The Carrier Bag, something about the carrier bag theory.
Oh, I need that. That is so important. I'm doing a whole podcast on that theme. Thank you so much. I love that. And do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
I don't know how you would define innate, like something that's embedded into our DNA. I feel like um, there's an innate need to look for information in all kinds of animals. Like there's curiosity in cats, and animals like search and discover all the time. Um, I feel like But I feel like to say that we have no conscious control over it would also be wrong, because I feel like it is a choice to be curious, and it's a choice to keep yourself open to information and to find it precious. So I think it's both.
Right. Some of these questions are either or, and it's not that I'm trying to put you on the spot and say you should answer. Both is totally fine. I don't know is fine. Really good. So I appreciate you doing this. Do thoughts create emotions?
Mm, yeah, but other things also create emotions. Um, Sensations create emotions. Reactions create emotions. Thoughts can create emotions, but they're not the only thing that create emotions.
Yes. Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I.
I don't know what I think until I have lived it.
Have lived it. Beautiful. McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. And Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it. So lived it is really beautiful. Back to that direct experience. Can
Yeah.
humans, yeah, can humans think without language?
Um, yes, but I think that because we do think with language, it is an incredibly specific languaged thought we have. I think that unlanguaged thought exists, but because we do have language, it is languaged thought.
Yeah. Unlanguaged thought. That's a great new phrase for me. I need that. Unlanguaged thought. Is that an original? Do you know your source on unlanguaged thought?
No, I just came up with that.
That's pretty dang good. I love that. See, Chomsky says a language is not just words, it's culture, tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
That's really interesting question. I have friends who are writing entire theses about this because I come from Singapore. So in Singapore, you have to be bilingual. You grow up speaking your mother tongue and English, but neither of those forms exist in Singapore in the way that they do in their dominant countries. So the Chinese that's spoken in Singapore is not the Chinese that's spoken in China, and the English that's spoken in Singapore is not the English that's spoken in the United States or in England. So Singapore exists at the crossroads of language, where a lot of times people don't have the native grasp of language to describe themselves, but this also like creates ruptures that um, create space where people can create their own language and use that to define their experiences. So I think that in the absence of language, new language emerges that's specific to the people and the context.
That's really good. A new language emerges. Beautiful. Your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
I think we're more feeling beings.
Yeah.
Um, because I think that all logic that I see people use at the end of the day hits like a bedrock or like is always guided by emotional intuition.
Yeah. Another great phrase, emotional intuition. I love that. Okay, so these are two questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. One, is thinking a function of the soul?
Interesting. I don't know. I think it might be. Um, I think about how the only reason we get along with each other is because we're able to put emotions aside sometimes and sit down and look each other in the eyes and talk about something even when it's uncomfortable. And I feel like um, that's not a function of feeling. I feel like that's a function of thought. Um, so, and I feel like when people dedicate themselves to their life's work, it's a function, it's a choice, it's a conscious thought that passes through their head because individual emotions can fluctuate in the day to day and you might not keep at something for so long. Um, so maybe, I'm not sure. I feel like this answer would be very different if you asked a scientist or a philosopher or somebody who uses language in their day to day and not a filmmaker.
Yeah. It's fun because it's been new. I've been asking these questions for 40 years, and these two Turing questions I just started asking in the last couple years. And it's so varied what I get. Most people go, is thinking a function of the soul? And they go, depends on what you mean by the soul. And it's like, well, it's back to your, like, we have a collective hunch or an emotional intuition what we feel words mean. We get it. When I say the word, you have an idea what I'm saying, but it's not going to be exactly what I think and you think, but we get this collective intuition of what words mean. So the word that I thought you brought up there was really important was gay. Well, the eye to eye, because this is the human gaze. I mean, we could do an entire 90 minutes on that. In that, my friend thinks that your that human eye contact is invented because you look into your mother's eyes to give you milk, you know, and then you start seeing the other person's reflection in their eyeball. You actually, so all this, where did the human gaze come from? The source, you know, John Berger started talking about the gaze, and then there's so much the female gaze now, and there's the medical gaze. So I love that you said this eye to eye comment. That really helped me. And the second Turing question is, can machines think?
Hmm. I think that I think machines can think. But that's also because I don't ascribe a particular weight to the word think. I don't
Yeah.
think that I don't think that think is like a uniquely human activity, nor do I think is it the core of like a human soul, nor do I think is it like the thing that defines human experience. I don't have that weight associated with the word think, so I do think that machines can think in the same way that plants can think, because I think because when I try to consider what the definition of think is, to me it indicates taking in factors and then reacting to it. Um,
Yeah.
so I think machines can do that, especially with AI these days. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't think that makes them human, nor do I think that uh nor do I even think that there's like a particular weight with humanness, but I don't think it makes them human.
Yeah. It's really brought up a lot because Bridget Bardot said, "When I make love, I don't think." And I heard that and I goes, "Good luck." It's like, you know, people who meditate, they go, "How do you stop thinking?" You say, like, people meditate, go, "I'm going to stop thinking about thinking." You know, I'm going to have an empty mind. And it's sort of hard for me to understand how you can stop thinking. You empty your mind. So giving less weight on the word think is an important thing for me to hear, I think. Yeah. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I think the only way I can pursue meaning is if I take happiness into the equation. I think that the only people who can pursue meaning without any concern for happiness um, are either are incredibly unhappy and will eventually fail, or are deeply religious and in good community. Like, I don't think that it's possible to seek um, meaning and forego happiness entirely. Nor do I think it's possible to seek happiness and forego meaning entirely.
Yeah. Yeah, I got it from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. He says happiness doesn't necessarily last and meaning tends to last longer. So the way you differentiated it, it's sort of like thinking and feeling. They're so interconnected, we can't really separate them, but we think we can because we invented the words, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
Huh, I don't know. I think that in relation to the last thing about happiness and meaning, I feel like in the same way that a happy marriage cannot last forever, unless you were in like dire circumstances where you could not leave the other person without some amount of happiness in the day to day. I feel like consciousness is probably the same way, where most of the time it exists outside of our uh, outside of our like ability to detect it. But every once in a while we'll notice it and we'll like stumble across it again. But I don't know. I think it exists outside of our like. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, no, that was good. I think it is both, but I like that you utilize the word detect, because the real thing here is it's me and you versus the wording on the question. So I like to kind of psychoanalyze the wording on the questions and figure out what we're trying to say with those words. So we'll cut a lot of these things will come back around. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Speed of light. Speed of thought is very slow.
Yeah. Audre Lorde, the poet, said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded, said you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
I don't know whether I can suggest a tool because I think what Audre Lorde's responding to was language. Was it language? And I don't know whether or not I have a tool that's beyond language. I was talking to a friend about this recently, about how the violence of the archive means that lots of people are excluded from it, but to create alternative archives only recreates the structure that will inevitably leave something out. So maybe the new tool is destruction. Maybe the newest tool is a tool of seeing destruction as not a path towards creation, but as an end in itself.
Yeah. That you broke up a little though. You said destruction, destruction. That's the word you said.
Yes, I said destruction.
Yeah,
Destru.
Yeah, very good. But another word you used just before that, it sounded like archive.
Yes, I was talking about archives.
Yes. Okay. I wanted to make sure that I heard it correctly. That's amazing. Yeah. What new toy do you suggest?
Fun. I don't think this is a new toy. I think walking around is great.
Yeah.
I think having fun and relearning how to play with no end goal in mind is great. And I don't think that's a new toy. I think it's an extremely old one that we've forgotten.
Yep. Beautiful. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Visa trouble. I'm worried about visa trouble right now because the immigration services is going to take a month and a half to get back to me, but my job needs this document in a month, so I'm caught in a kind of Kafkaesque circus where I can move nowhere because there's no option given to me and nothing is in my control.
Yeah. Well, I pre-paved your path with positiveness. My friend just got his visa renewed here in LA for 3 more years. So hang in there. Positive. Yes. Forward.
Thank you.
McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound, the poet, that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So we might be able to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So, Axel, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Because it would make it harder to live.
Yeah.
It's like how somebody said once, there's a metaphor for disability and trauma with spoons, knives, and forks. Um, and a spoon is how much energy you have, and it indicates what things you can do. And every time you do something, you lose a spoon. And everyone has finite spoons. And forks are annoyances that get stuck in you, and you can remove annoyances. And like knives are violent, and if you remove a knife, you better be ready to stop the bleeding. And I feel like a lot of people have knives stuck in them that if they remove, they wouldn't know how to stop the bleeding. So it's better to not remove them at all.
Yeah. Amazing. Who came up with that spoon, fork, and knives thought?
I'm not sure. It's like something that got passed down to me through word of mouth and that I use in my everyday, but I don't know who made it.
Wow, I need that. That was really well put. I love it. And so, do artists have moral obligation?
No.
Say it again. You broke up.
No.
Okay. Are you more?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Do you want to comment or?
I think that artists have moral obligation as people, but not as artists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
All new ideas are old ideas.
Yeah. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
I think my earliest memory ever is when I was around 2 years old and I was looking over the shoulder of somebody who was drawing. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to remember this moment. And I don't know why I specifically decided to remember that moment, but I did. And I remember that specific moment.
Beautiful. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
It's a blessing.
Yeah.
I think to be able to remember things is a privilege. And to not be able to remember things is a horrible, horrible curse.
Tell me someone within your immediate family and then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model. And what specifically was that impact?
Somebody in my immediate family. My immediate family only consists of 3 people: my brother, my mother, and my father. And I think that all 3 of them have shaped me in ways that are very difficult to define, but very substantial. I think I get a lot of my um, like impulsivity and emotion from my mother. She's very, very exuberant. She's very, very courageous, but extremely, extremely impulsive. And my father is the exact opposite. He's incredibly reserved. He never changes. He's very, very, very quiet. So I think that I get a lot of my personality from the two of them, probably in equal measure. Um, and somebody outside of them who's impacted me, 2 of my teachers. The first teacher's name is Miss Ong, Joanna, and she really influenced me because she was wholly, wholly dedicated to other people and to things that were outside of herself. And she demonstrated like a devotion and self-sacrifice that I didn't think was possible. Um, and she was incredibly observant, and I used to get scolded by her all the time for not being observant enough. and for not thinking about how my actions affected other people. And another professor who was really integral to me was Africanus, because I think that he demonstrated a way of seeing other people that was always generous. Um, and he always gave without being overbearing. So I think that both of those professors really influenced me.
Really well put. You're very articulate and concise. I appreciate that. So, did your parents raise you a particular religion?
No, my parents grew up in the wake of communist China, so the effects of that were still being felt. And there was no religion in their childhood, so they didn't grow up religious and they didn't raise me religious.
Do you pray?
No.
If
I
God
have
exists,
mantras.
oh, you have mantras, yeah.
Yeah.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Um, I'd like him to say, "Are you okay?"
Oh my God, are you okay? That's actually really beautiful, and no one's ever said that. Are you okay? That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Do do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I don't think that evil people exist. And I don't think that evil has a body or a form outside of people. Um, People have the capacity to be evil, just like they have the capacity to be hurt or be happy.
The hidden question, really, or the deeper question, is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurai. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I think it depends on what this enemy is. Is this enemy another person? Is this enemy like is this enemy a result of your own insecurity? Are you projecting on your enemy? Like, for example, is this for example, is this like conservatives being like, oh my god, gay people are drinking Bud Light, we can't drink Bud Light, Bud Light is our enemy, or like gay people are our enemy. Like in that case, I wouldn't say that ignoring your enemy is the best course of action. But if this is like somebody who's caused you immense harm and continues to do so, like an abusive parent or like an abusive relationship, then yes, I think that you should ignore your enemy. But I don't think that there's a universal answer to that.
Yeah. Nassim Taleb said games were created to give non heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. Someone said villains don't think they're bad, they want control. Heroes want freedom. And the anthropologist Gregory Bateson said when the criminal gets caught, do they go, oh, my criminal skills weren't up to that day? Or do they go, wow, I did something morally and socially wrong? So it's a lot of prompts, but the basic question is, does punishment work?
No, I don't think punishment works. That's my
Yeah.
instinctive answer. I don't think that thinking about life in terms of retribution is helpful. And even in like a society that is as influenced by um, Christian ideology as this one, um, like having used to come from an extremely strict church that really preached very specific morals and very specific actions. Um, Even then, I don't think that retribution um, works. Uh, but I do like even in that setting, even in that church, I think that even though there was a huge focus on hell and on the potential for retribution, um, there was an even greater focus on gratitude because you were supposed to act the way that you did, not because you were scared of hell, but because you were grateful for having been saved already. Um, so And we've seen time and time again that when people are punished, they don't necessarily change their actions if their circumstances aren't changed. A lot of times people aren't doing something or are not capable of doing something not because they don't want to, but because something is hindering them. Um, yeah, but that's a long winded way of saying no, I don't think that punishment works.
Yeah, it was maybe it was long-winded, but it was smartly winded. That was beautiful. I loved your use of the word gratitude in there. That was beautiful. But it really touched me what you said. In fact, James Joyce was a projectionist, was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, "This is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?" Years later, Faulkner said, "Sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism." Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Um, because you go through life not knowing what to observe. And you don't realize until in retrospect what was really important. Like, I've had so many conversations with people where I look back and I'm like, oh, that had such an impact on me, but I didn't realize it while I was having it because it was just another Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Um, it's the same question as the question about memory. I think that things take on meaning and become precious in memory. Uh, but you might not realize it while you're actually living it. And
Yeah.
I think it's good that you don't realize it while you actually live it because you would be watching yourself live life without allowing yourself to be potentially swayed by all the possibilities that are happening in each present moment. Um, but once you've experienced it and once it's left its impact, I think reflecting on it and being able to see it clearly is important.
Well put. Yeah, I really like what you just said. I worked for George Carlin, the comedian, and we got this flyer in the mail, and it said, "I'm trying to get more control over my spontaneity." And it sort of reminds me of that. Like you're having this epiphany with talking with a friend, and then you're saying, "I'm having an epiphany," and you miss the epiphany because you're trying to realize you're having the epiphany. You just like
Yeah.
let it wash over you, and then in retrospect, in memory, you go, "Wow, I can review that now and step away from it and see." Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Analyzing should only come after it's happened,
Yeah.
but it's still important.
So walk us through just briefly your tipping points. You almost, by telling me your first memory, there was some impact on someone drawing something. So where in your life did you go, I want to be an artist, I want to be an animator? And I mean, those are your two main things, let's say, for now. I mean, you're an educator too, and a installation artist. I mean, you're many more things, but is it fair to say artist and animator? Where's the tipping point? And you go, that's my calling.
I wouldn't call it a tipping point so much as because a tipping point implies that there's a specific point that you crossed, and then after that, everything was certain. Like, I'm very young. I'm 22 years old.
Yeah.
So I think that it wasn't a tipping point so much as a uh like, you know how when a tree falls and it seems to take forever and it doesn't speed up until maybe the very end? Um, I feel like it was like that. There was no point, there was maybe a gradient. Um, and that came with just making small decisions or small mistakes. Like, I just kept doing art, um, and not doing as much school as I did art. Or I applied to art school and got in, and then I went to art school. And then in art school I was like, oh, maybe I'll do graphic design. But instead of doing graphic design every day, I just kept making animation. So eventually that's what I ended up doing.
Very good. So, a screenwriting teacher told me great art or great film is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great film and great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process when you're making a film?
I think that my intention is important in guiding a film to its finished form. And once it's finished, my intention doesn't matter at all. Um, Once it's finished to me, it lives by itself. It's a creature outside of me, and other people can glean totally different intentions from it. Other people can see it and decide that it's something entirely different to them. Um, but I think that in art making, there does come a point where, um, especially if you work in a very specific medium and you see a lot of work in that specific medium, there comes a point where you can identify when work is good and when work is not. Um, and my intention is only matters in getting work to the point where it's good. And then after that, it should be code red. My intention should disappear from it.
Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your viewer when you're making your film?
Depends on the film. But generally speaking, not a lot.
Yeah.
I have, well, not a lot, and also like very ardently, because I am notorious in amongst my circles for having very little faith in my audience. Um, I don't really care if people understand my work, but I want them to sit through the whole thing. And I think that people have incredibly short attention spans, and I don't trust my audience to sit engage through the whole thing. So I think about my audience in terms of whether or not they're going to be engaged, but I don't think about my audience in terms of whether or not they're going to get it.
Yeah. Very good. Really good. Important. And let's say one of your main tools is the pen or the pencil. McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness, like knife and fork extends our teeth. The shutter in a camera or projector extends our eyelid. And even non tangibles, say religion or philosophy, might be an extension of consciousness. What does the pen or writing utensil extend for you? What humanness?
Voice.
Yeah. Wow. McLuhan also said there's no such thing as a good or a bad movie. It's a good or bad viewing experience. Any comment?
I agree that there's no bad work. I think there is good work.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do think that a viewing experience will really alter how something is perceived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you show your film in the Ann Arbor Film Festival, you're in a 20s movie palace. It's really exciting to see it on that big screen, with an amazing peer group,
Yeah. Yeah. If I saw some of those films on like a shitty laptop screen, I might not be as taken with it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But there are no bad films, but there are definitely good films.
Yeah. You're a good listener. You're really doing what I like as people think about the question, listen to the question. Peter Greenaway said cinema is much too rich a medium to be left to storytellers. Are experimental filmmakers telling us stories different ways or doing something completely different? If me and you watch Tony Conrad's The Flicker, black and white flickering back on and off, we might
Yeah.
have a story run through our head, but it's not storytelling per se. So, any thoughts on this? Experimental filmmakers telling stories a different way or doing something completely different?
I think that some experimental makers are making stories, actually. I think that some experimental makers care about like the arc that their films take. I think what defines storytelling for me is epiphany making.
Yeah,
If the film brings you through an epiphany, or if the film cares about its linear timeline, then it's a story. I think it's a story. But sometimes films don't care about that. Sometimes films are purely formal experimentations, like Len Lai's Free Radicals.
oh,
Um, and I think that Free Radicals is not storytelling. I think Free Radicals is something else. Um, but lots of experimental makers do make stories. Like I think that what's it called? Um, Flickr films, and especially the one that we saw at Ann Arbor, the one that like was 30 minutes long. I feel like that was a story.
yeah,
Yeah, because it had progression and it
yeah.
had change within it. Um,
Well put. Yeah.
yeah,
That's Andrew Noren said, if you put one frame next to another, that is storytelling. It doesn't matter if it's abstract or a person's face. It's storytelling. So that's a really good example. That 30-minute thing really, really well done, because bringing up Lin Lai, Free Radicals, touched me deeply. That he's one of my heroes. In fact, Hollis Frampton, another filmmaker I'm fond of, says narrative is born among the animal necessities of the spirit because we're waiting to die. Can you forget to die?
can you repeat animals, spirits?
Yeah, no, what Hollis said was narrative is born among the animal necessities of the spirit because we're waiting to die. He's just sort of saying that the spirit has this animal necessity because that's where narrative was born. It has some animalistic necessity of the spirit because we're waiting to die.
Interesting.
And
Interesting.
then I just glom on the question, can you forget to die? I mean, you don't have to apply a lot of the quotes, you don't have to apply to the question. Again, that's why I say you put it into the context you want.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. Um, yeah, I think that you can forget to die. And I think that if you forget to die, you're not making a film. Because I think that films have births and deaths. Films
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
unique in the art world, where they are the only art form I can think of other than music, um, that has an ending. And I think
Yeah.
that death is satisfying in a way that cannot be recreated. So I think that you absolutely can forget to die, and lots of people do. But filmmakers, if you're making a film, uh, you never forget.
Yeah. Well done. If me and you were starting the Ann Arbor Film Festival like over 60 years ago, time travel,
Yeah.
should we be more inclusive or exclusive? And keep in mind, it's usually mainly experimental films, but there's a fraction of animations and some documentaries. When I talked to Chick Strand about this, she was starting Canyon Cinema at the same time, and she said we were trying to recreate our 11-cent movie going experience, where we would see a newsreel, a cartoon, and then shit, why don't we show an experimental film? Stan Brakhage came along and says, no, don't show the other stuff, just show experimental films. So should we be more inclusive or more exclusive?
I think we should be more inclusive but more discerning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this whole idea of marginalizing experimental film, when Jackson Pollock was on the cover of Life magazine in 1949, regular people could start forming an aesthetic on experimental painting. There were no Bruce Conner or Maya Deren Life magazine covers.
Yeah.
Generally, it's privileged, entitled, I call them rich art kids, who develop an avant-garde experience and dominate the experimental film world. Any comment?
I don't think that it's just rich art kids who dominate the experimental film world. I feel like there's a lot of rich kids around, but there's also people who um don't have any money and are like making things in their backyard. Um
That's good. Yeah. So you froze up there. Okay. Did you finish?
are we back? Are we back?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't want to
Okay.
interrupt you. Yeah. Good. That was good what you said. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That is my hope. Yeah. In fact, I spoke with Michael Apted 40 years ago, and I said, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? In most people don't know, Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922 in France, but in the 80s it flourished with MTV to the point where Marty Scorsese says, I cut my films faster because of MTV. And Michael Apted said, because we've learned to take in information faster. So I asked this question with a bias. Can we literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
No, I don't think that we can learn to take in information faster because um in different languages, the number of syllables per second is different. So the number of syllables per second for English is pretty average, but the number of syllables not per second, per minute, but the number of syllables per minute for Japanese is very, very high. But if you try to measure the amount of information that's transmitted in every minute of speech, it's the same for every language, no matter how many syllables there are. Um, because the human brain is only capable of processing that much information in each minute. Uh, so I think that we're not actually processing more. We just need more stimulus. We just need more syllables.
Yeah. You are smart, man. I needed that answer so bad. In 40 years, no one's gotten that this concise because, most people say, well, there's Evelyn Wood's speed reading. We can learn to read faster. And I mean, really, the hidden question is, can humans literally multitask?
No, I don't think
Sheesh.
so. I don't think it's possible.
There's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but those you got right. Thank you. What what was the motive of the cave artist?
To make animation.
That's good, to make anime. That is a great answer.
Yeah.
What's more important, conviction or compromise?
Um, both in different circumstances. That's hard to choose from.
Yeah. You've accomplished a lot already at age 22. What a cool number to be at. I loved your line. This is my favorite line you've said. I'm very young. that is a beautiful attitude. You know, some people would go, man, I'm old. I'm already 20. You know, I can't believe we're 50 years apart because it feels like we're just friends and same, you know, age. I mean, what
Yeah.
difference is it? But in your accomplishments so far, how do you rate these three elements, luck, skill, and ambition? What plays the biggest role, second and third, so far in your career and your life accomplishment?
Um, I think luck plays the biggest role. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't born into this specific family that had the ability to send me to art school. Um, I wouldn't have the money to apply to all of these different things and to be here and to be able to focus on art making without having to do other things. And then after that, I think is ambition, because I
Yeah,
think that all of the people I know who believe that they can do it eventually manage to do it.
yeah,
Like, I think that with ambition comes grit, comes conviction, comes like a stupid, a stupid kind of confidence that makes you reach out and try to take things that maybe you weren't supposed to take.
yeah,
Um, and that leads you somewhere most of the time. Uh, and not that I think that's necessarily a good thing. Like, I'm very ambivalent about it, but I do think that ambition plays a big role, and I think that ambition is tied to your position in life, whether or not you grew up in the right kind of environment with the right context, whether you have that kind of self-confidence is very dependent on the environment that you were raised in, which goes back to luck. So ambition is the result of luck. And finally comes skill, because
yeah,
I think that skill is the result of ambition and luck and all the other things. But if you believe you can do it and you're lucky enough to be in a place where you can pursue it, then you'll end up gaining the skills necessary. Um, yeah. So
yeah.
that's my
That's
ranking.
beautiful. That's Warhol says it's not who you are, it's who you think you are. In fact, the question used to be, is ambition based more on fear or joy? 80% of people would say fear. And then I read Friedkin, the director of Exorcist, and he said, in Hollywood, luck and skill have nothing to do with it. It's all ambition. So
Yeah.
then I decided to change the question. But I do have to tell you, my other favorite line is Gary Player, the golfer, says, the more you practice, the luckier you get.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
T.S. Eliot said poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Melodrama.
Ah, melodrama. I've never had that answer. That is good. I got to tell you, one of my favorite answers is, you know, Abigail Child, really great experimental filmmaker. I said, what language is your inner dialogue in? She goes, I wish I knew.
Oh,
So,
that's funny.
you know, you said the word mantra. I always use this for the next question. George Manupelli's founder of the Ann Arbor Film Festival, his mantra was ignore yourself. Jonas Mika says there is no self-expression. And Cecil Taylor, jazz pianist, says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making more self-expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever technologies, cultures, and environments are dominant?
I think you're a vehicle.
Yeah.
Or I think good art, you're a vehicle. Um, but like you're a vehicle that like irretrievably changes everything that comes through you. Um, it's like it's like a filter. It's like an extremely potent filter. Um, you like cannot make the work that you're not meant to make. But all the work that you make is a result of the environments that you're in. Like I'm in a residency right now, and I talk to visiting artists, residents, fellows, art makers every single day, and I have different conversations every single day. But the same concerns and the same frameworks keep cropping up. People only seem to be concerned about a few different things. Um, and I think that's a result of the world that we live in. Um, but it's a different flavor with each person.
Yeah. Can art making be egoless?
Um, no, I think that you can't possibly remove your own hand, and it's impossible uh, to try to hide yourself in your own work, and to try to claim that your work is truly egoless is extremely misdirected, I think, and only does your subject a disservice because you're not revealing the context where you're coming from.
Is perception reality?
It might as well be. It's
That's a great. There's a
yeah.
great film. I want you to see this film by Cole. It won in Ann Arbor years ago, but came out of the reject pile and then won. It's Coleman Scott Miller's fake experimental film called Uso Justo, Usojusto. It's an amazing short film, and it was Bruce Connor's favorite film. And when I says, is perception reality, he says, that's all you got.
Yeah. That's that's all you have.
That's all you have is yeah. Well, no, I most people say no, perception is not reality. But anyways, I like your thinking and your feeling and your expressions. Let me ask you a couple, tell you a couple art quotes, because I'm always studying this thing we call art, and it seems as though you're so knee deep in the swamp muck of art. You're just there creating, learning, teaching. These two quotes intrigued me, and they came up recently. The poet Fanny Howe said, the point of art is to show people that life is worth living by showing that it isn't. Any comment on that? Because I don't really get it, but I'm just curious if you have any reaction to it.
Um, I think that's true. I think that's true because I think that every good piece of art has an irresolvable contradiction in it. Every
Yeah,
good piece of art I've seen has like a tension and a contradiction that is truly, truly irresolvable.
yeah,
Um, like you can't possibly look at it and go, and you know what? That's what makes life hopeful. Like it doesn't give you any answer, but because it manages to articulate that inability to give an answer, it makes people feel seen and understood. And even
yeah,
if they can't describe it, it gives people the ability to keep going on. Um,
yeah.
because, yeah, that's just it.
That's good. Yeah, my thing is I always say great art fucks your shit up and says, makes you go, I can do that. but
Yeah, it's true.
here's the one. He came out of it, Michigan, important artist. He says, making art is making your problems everybody else's problems.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think good art is making your problems so specific or so relevant that other people could see themselves having the same problems, bothering everyone else with something that's incredibly specific and incredibly contextual.
Yeah. Why is it so difficult for humans to consider the possibility that life may be pointless?
Because it's not.
Very good. Lewis Carroll says, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Yeah. Every time I start a new film, I believe in the impossible thing that I can make a new film.
Nice.
It always feels impossible. And I'm starting a new film now, and it feels impossible every single day.
Yeah.
I believe in I think that I always believe that every moment is gonna be forever, or that it's gonna be significant.
Yeah.
Which is impossible because that can't possibly be true, but I just instinctively believe it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything impossible you believe in?
Oh, yeah. That's great. You're asking me the question? Yeah. I mean, I love what Sun Ra says. The impossible attracts me because everything possible has been done and the world didn't change. So, that's a beautiful in you said it earlier, the ability to change. I mean, that was your first answer. The best thing for a human being is the ability to change. Well, if you look at everything's changing every second, everything always changes. The only aphorism I ever made up on my own that I think is there's no absolutes, is that except that there are no absolutes, which is like there's always change. It's so I think, well, it's a perfect lead into the next question. You have ESP. Tell me one major element of your creativeness that's changed and one major element that stayed the same in the 20 years you've been doing this. Because I mean, you probably started becoming creative at 2, according to your memory. So I mean, in the years you've been being creative, tell me one major element that stayed the same and one major element that's changed.
The biggest thing that's changed is that I'm no longer afraid. Like, I'm not afraid if I fail, because I just believe that that's part of the process. I'm not
Yeah.
afraid when I start a new film and I feel totally lost. I'm not afraid when I do something stupid and it doesn't turn out the way I want it to. I'm not afraid when I make a bad film.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that stayed the same is that all of my films are about the people, and all of my work and all of my creative energy um, is externally directed. It's always directed with a gaze towards the people around me, and only in my immediate vicinity, not anything outside of what I can see and touch and talk to with my own body. And that's something that's remained very consistent throughout my life.
It's pretty good. Really articulate. Thank you. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
I used to cry so much. One time I had to do a school recital, and we had been preparing for this for months, which in the age of 7-year-old child is literally years. Um, and I went on stage and I started crying in front of everyone. And my parents were furious with me. And as a child, I just cried so much. I was always crying. Um, and now I think that um even with the like stress of life and with like the stress of having to navigate a foreign country by myself, um I and like the stress of meeting like lots of new people constantly, I still have like um the capacity to feel very potently, sometimes to my own detriment. Um, but it's a strength in my making. I feel like it gives me very good emotional intuition for what's relevant and what's not.
Yeah, really well put. It's my mother taught me that crying gets toxins out of your body physically. But it's also this emotional release, but it's also doing something physically important. And it is okay to cry. And it's really amazing how you flipped that, and it made you, you know, you also in your last, the same in the change question, evoked, Samuel Beckett's great quote. He says, "Fail once, then fail again better."
Yeah, yeah. I'm not worried about failing now because I feel like it's gonna lead me somewhere, and if I can get through the failures as quickly as possible, um, I have to do it in order to get to any kind of success.
Yeah. But it also seems as though, my question is everything you just said over the last couple minutes, did you get that more from the way your parents raised you or on your own? Because you did commend how your parents raised you, and you were articulate about that. But when they were, I think you used the word, well, they were angry with you or mad with you that you cried. Do you think, and then you flip that to a strength, it helped you in the long run? What if they weren't angry and they'll go, "Oh, that's good that you cried"? Do you think you've got this whole sense of that direction you just articulated more from the way your parents raised you or more on your own?
I don't think I got it on my own. I think I got it from friends and from teachers who
Okay.
encouraged me in
Yeah.
like ways. And I think that it's good that my parents didn't encourage me when I was a child because I feel like it would have made me self-indulgent. Because I do
Yeah.
think that it's a strength now, but I think that it's a strength that is tempered, that has to be taken very carefully. Because again, I have a tendency to be extremely melodramatic. Um, so I think that my parents did like if it was like an incredibly potent explosive, they managed to contain the explosion so that now it can exist as a gentle flame.
Yes. But extremely melodramatic. Where did you get that from?
Um I've always been like that, just like in self-reflection, just like in thinking about my past and in thinking about the things that I used to do. When I was in preschool, one time I remember I told everyone that my mom had died just so I could get seconds.
To get seconds. That's funny.
Yeah.
But I mean, did you learn this from like reading or watching TV shows? I mean, how do you learn to be melodramatic? I mean, I'm just curious, that's funny.
Yeah. Um, I think it's just in my nature. Like
Yeah.
I didn't watch a lot of media.
Oh,
And my parents are not very I didn't watch a lot of shows because as a kid
yeah.
growing up, we like weren't allowed to watch TV. Um, and my parents are not very melodramatic people. but I think that I just feel a lot and take myself too seriously sometimes.
But were your peer group, were your parents unusual? Was your peer groups all growing up with TV and video games, and you were different, or you were a lot of it was the same with your peer groups? They were restricted.
I think it depends. I think we watched less TV than the average child for sure.
Right.
I
Right.
definitely watched way less TV than most of my friends.
Yeah. We got about 20 more minutes, man. I really appreciate this. This has been truly enlightening. Anger can be a productive emotion when fill in the blank.
When you're being attacked or
There's a
when
lot
you're being wronged. Yeah,
when you're being bombed. Yeah.
yeah.
There's a line that Leonard Cohen says, the only way you can sell a concert is to put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know. What role does risk play in your creative process?
I think risk comes when you're being honest, and people can tell if you're being honest or not.
Yes. Well, it goes along with Viola Spolin. She was a social worker in Chicago, and her role playing exercises helped invent comedy improv for like Second City and Saturday Night Live. Amazing woman. And she said, if the audience cannot see your struggle to achieve something, they cannot root for you to achieve it. What role has struggle played in your creative process?
Hmm. I think that in order to make anything new, you have to struggle. Like,
Yeah,
we're so overloaded with visual information these days that I think it's very difficult to create something, a visual, like, way of representation that people haven't seen before. Um, and I think that it's people can tell when something is new and when something came from a struggle to find something that's new. So my struggle always comes in experimenting and trying new things and failing and trying new things again and failing some more, and refusing to do things in ways that are tried and true.
yeah. It's beautiful. Evokes Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce is satirizing information overload. And McLuhan probed Finnegan's Wake by saying that artists dream awake, not to sound elitist, but everybody can create these amazing scenarios in the middle of the night when they're sleeping. But artists also do it while they're awake. They dream awake. Have dreams played a role in your creative process?
No. Interestingly, no. I find myself quite uninterested in dreams. Um, because I feel like they might be metaphors for real life, or you could analyze them in some kind of way, but it is much more compelling to me to just talk about the thing directly.
Yeah, I agree. I think dreams are not so much to be analyzed or even remembered. Dreams are to be dreamt. That's what the beauty of a
Mhm.
dream is, that you dream it. That's it. You don't have to talk about it or analyze it.
Yeah,
Axel,
and
there's a
tell me
line.
nothing is.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say nothing is more boring than hearing about another person's dream.
Yeah. Yep. There's a line that goes, you create what you resist. Bob Goldthwait morphed it into, you are what you hate. James Joyce said it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. And Louis Nail said atheist. So there's, I'm curious your thoughts on this line. You create what you resist. I'm not saying you, but one creates what one resists. Any thoughts on that line?
For the longest time, I thought that I was interested in form and shape, and I was like interested in material, which I am. I am interested in that, but it was because I was trying to distance myself from figurative animation, which I associate with Disney. But I
Yeah.
realized that animation is my animation, at least, is wholly uninteresting to me unless there is figurative something in it, unless it is referencing something that is directly from the real world. Um, yeah, and I think that I try to make my work very loose and intuitive a lot of the times, but my work inevitably comes out with the same structure every single time. In
Yeah.
every single film, my films have the same structure, and I can't run away from it.
Yeah. It's beautiful. How do you find peace of mind?
Um, I don't. Um, I try. I'm actually quite good at finding peace of mind. I actually have to tell myself that it's good to sit with discomfort and not uh, resolve it in my own head.
Yeah. These are 5 quick Alan Watts questions off the top of your head in just a couple words. Number 1, who started it all?
Someone else.
Are we going to make it?
Probably.
Where do we put it?
Um, in a safe place.
Who's cleaning it up?
Someone else.
Is it serious?
Only if you want it to be.
Very good. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Over.
If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Don't be scared. Um, and learn how to take a joke and make one.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
What's funny you say joke because McLuhan loves Steve Allen's line, behind every joke, there's a grievance. And maybe just drop the word every. Behind jokes, there's a grievance. Any thoughts on that line?
Yeah, it's true. I think that jokes and humor help people face things that they might not want to face, and help people change in ways that, and receive feedback in ways that they might not otherwise be able to. And whenever I have a argument with my partner, I find that joking about it and being able to laugh about it helps both of us reach resolution and compromise much more quickly.
Beautiful. What's the function of laughter?
Um, I feel like it's like the same as, like, me and my parents, we argue a lot. Um, but whenever we argue, we know that the way to smooth the argument over is to talk about our dog and to talk about what he's up to and what he's doing at that moment. And I think laughter does the same thing in most social situations, where I feel like it's not necessarily point ever, like most of the time, pointing at something that's extremely pertinent to anybody present, but it's a necessary social lubricant.
Beautiful. I agree. Gurdjieff says laughter is the reconciliation of yes and no. But my friend used to write comedy with Robin Williams, and I asked him, can satire be destructive? And he said, that's the job of satire. Now, if me or you do a cartoon in a certain country and they kill us, some people think dying is destructive. But Swift compared satire to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own. In fact, Frank Zappa saying, watch the Nazis run your town. Now go home and check yourself. You think we're singing about somebody else. What's the function of satire?
Um, I'll be honest, I grew up in a culture where satire was not often used, nor because I think I associate satire with a political agenda. And
Yeah,
I grew up in a place where political commentary was not common nor encouraged. Um, yeah, but I feel like satire helps people be more critical. Um, I don't know whether or not it helps people be more critical in a thoughtful way, but it helps people be more critical.
yeah. But it's interesting, like
Yeah.
growing up in the 60s, we took the news as important. It was like, this is news, Walter Cronkite, and we'd all watch the same news. And then we were also reading Mad Magazine, and then Saturday Night Live started making fun of news. It's called satire news. And then, spawned Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert. And so many people get their news from satire news. Does satire news more activate or more pacify people?
Interesting. Not a question that I've asked myself before. I think that it activates people because I feel like you feel involved when you're watching satire news. They're talking directly to you. You're laughing along, you're emotionally invested. I feel like news um, rarely involves a call to action. There's like less of a personal inflection in it.
Call to action. What great words. That's what we need. Call to action. In fact, McLuhan in 57 said an interesting, it's misleading to suppose there's any basic difference between education and entertainment. It's always been true that whatever pleases teaches more effectively. So, you're
I believe
still,
that.
yeah, that's what I was just curious. It teaches, but then what, there's a lot involved in that. Teaches, pleasing, teaches, and what is more effective, because you're in a realm where is what you're doing, is it education or is it entertainment or some sort of resonating interval in between, you know
Yeah. I do think that everything that is entertaining educates, which is why military propaganda through the Marvel cinematic universe is so much more effective, like so much more effective, like wildly more successful than anyone could have ever imagined because the emotional payoff is so high. Um, I think that entertainment is always education, even if education is not entertainment.
yeah.
Um, what you enjoy is going to shape your beliefs, it's going to shape your values, it's going to shape what you think is real. Um, I think that my work is education, but it only educates people who want to be educated about what I'm trying to talk about. Because I don't think
Yeah.
that my films are easy to sit through, or like the most pleasant to sit through. And I don't think I'm interested in making them palatable to people who don't want to sit through them.
Utah Phillips says anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's entitled to make the rules?
Hi, I'm back.
Yeah.
Can you hear me
Oh,
again?
yeah, I can
Yeah,
hear you. Good, thanks.
yeah. But what I was saying is, if you want to understand, my films try to tell you something prescient about my experiences or somebody else's experiences. But if you don't want to understand, they'll tell you nothing much at all.
Yeah. Good. We just got about 4 more minutes, and I really appreciate your time. This has been fun. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Um, I think that everybody wants to be a lot more simple, which I think is inspiring because it means that you're focusing on the things in front of you,
Yes.
which also means that there's a lot more emphasis on talking to your neighbors, on doing what you can with the like materials that you have. It means not setting our sights to like saving the world, but saving the people around you, which I think is incredible and something that I look forward to partaking in.
I agree with you. Great aspiration. I'm with you 100%. How has making art and animation shaped your behavior?
I only listen to one song at a time because it distracts me too much to listen to multiple things. When I watch a TV show, I have to finish it. If not, I can't do anything else. I can only do one thing at a time, and I think that this is the result of it. When I do exercise, I do long distance running, and I climb like 2,000 stairs.
Yeah,
Um, my like practice is a result of what was already apparent in my personality, which is that I love routine and having a center of gravity. Um, but it's only emphasized this and made it more prominent.
really good. And I love center of gravity because something I pursue in searching is center without margins, you know. But in order to have a center without a margins, you still have to understand what margins and what centers are.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
What question remains unresolved for you?
Um, how to live with other people.
Yeah. 2 more and we're out of here. Thank you so much. Thornton,
Thank you for having me. Yeah,
oh,
but what is it?
yeah, really fun. 2 more. Here we go. Art. Thornton Wilder said in 1928, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
Um, I hate to say this, and I don't think that this is true all of it. I think that this should be taken with with large shovels of salt, but I think it really is all about me.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's really fine and honest. I believe honesty is the best policy. That's beautiful. What this is the last question. What gives you the most optimism?
That it's not all about me.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. I really appreciate that. So even hit the end broadcast button. I hope this conversation never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever. Thank you so much for your time and energy and all your films.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.